Hello, welcome back to Level 10 NPC. My name's Stephen and I am your host in this channel where we drill down into the minutiae of making player characters, turning those numbers and statistics on your character sheets into playable player characters, living, breathing beings with a whole life of interesting things that you can play with and explore as you go through your campaign with your dungeon master. 'Tis the season, so I'm wearing my Christmas jumper. It's Donald Duck having trouble with some Christmas tree lights. Today we are going to have a look at making a character from the Pathfinder 2nd edition rules setting, just to shake things up a bit and to show different styles and mechanics for making player characters. But the process of making the backstory and the history probably a little bit different, but the end result will be pretty much the same. You will have a backstory, a life to apply to your numbers and stats to make the complete package. So let's just get on with it. Let's turn those NPCs into PCs. So here we are. This is the Pathfinder 2nd edition book, and the purposes of the video, we're going to be using this to make our next character. Second edition of this fantastic game. If you haven't had a look at Pathfinder yet, because you're still on your first journey with Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, and you may be looking to find some new perspective on role-playing games, I would say Pathfinder 2nd edition is a good place to start. Really well laid out book, and everything kind of follows a nice flow. Using this book kind of guide you through here. Broad strokes of the game, the 3 action economy, etc. Character creation. So here we are. There's a lot of familiarities between this and Dungeons and Dragons. Your stats are the same: strength, dex, con, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, because it was evolution of Dungeons and Dragons 3.5. They split at that point and went on and made their own system, Pathfinder, and now we're in the 2nd edition of Pathfinder. You'll see there is a lot of similarities there. Your stat modifiers, etc. 12 to 13 plus 1, 14 to 15 plus 2, 16 to 17 plus 3, 18 to 19 plus 4, and so on and so on. You have now the thing that not strange, but the thing that's different, or one of the most things, is when it comes to making a character in Pathfinder, the first step they say is to create a concept. So the blurb there is, what sort of hero do you want to play? The answer to this question might be as simple as a brave warrior, or as complicated as the child of elven wanderers, but raised in a city dominated by humans and devoted to Sarene, goddess of the sun. Consider your character's personality, sketch out a few details about their past, think about how they adventure. You'll want to peruse Pathfinder's available ancestries, backgrounds and classes. The summaries on page 22-23 might help you match your concept with some of these basic rule elements. Before the game begins, it's also a good idea for the players to discuss how their characters might know each other and how they work together throughout the course of the adventures. There are many ways to approach your character concept. Once you have a good idea of the character you'd like to play, move on to step 2 and start building your character. Okay, we're going to pause here and have a little kind of discussion about that. I find it hard to create in a vacuum. You can't just sit down and say, hey, my character is going to be X, Y, or Z. I always find you need to have some prompts. You need to have some sort of input into this. You can't just, personally, I just can't just sit down and say, I'm going to be blah, 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 blah. That might be different for other people, but certainly for me, when I make a character, I like to be inspired about my character. But this would follow on from previous conversation in the last video about taking inspiration from popular media. For instance, the Black Widow character, or whoever. You could, I suppose, approach this like, I want to make Neo from the Matrix, or Strider, or Aragorn from Lord of the Rings. I want to be a brave warrior, or I want to be a halfling thief. And you could be as vague as that. If you're coming into Pathfinder 2nd edition and you know nothing about the world, it's hard to then turn around and say, well, as in the second example there, it kind of drills a little bit into the religions of the world, the gods and the goddesses, and cities that are human dominated, etc. That I find to be an unattainable or unassailable wall. So, for the purposes of our character, I'm going to roll it randomly. Now, I'm keeping everything in the core book. I'm not going to any of the supplementary titles because, like Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, the more supplementary material that's available for a game, the more options and choices that you have for making a character. And I think sometimes too much choice is a bad thing. It muddies the waters a little bit, not completely, but it does, in my opinion. So, keeping it basic, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 basic classes that you can choose from. I rolled my dice earlier and I came up with a goblin. Goblins are short, scrappy, energetic people who have spent a millennium aligned and feared. Okay, and the classes that are available to us, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 classes. I rolled a d12. I came up with a ranger. That being that, the next step then is to start building the character. Now, for this, I'm just going to kind of go through the pages and show the things in the book through the steps. Start building ability scores. Select an ancestry. Now, when you build your ability scores, it's not like Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. All your stats start at 10, and you apply your bonuses to them, and your stats will increase by 2 every time you select a stat. You have, your character's ability score start at 10, and you select your ancestry, background, and class. You'll apply ability boosts, which increase a score by 2, and ability flaws, which decrease a score by 2. At this point, just note a 10 in each ability score and familiarise yourself with the rules for ability boosts and flaws on page 20. This is also a good time to identify which ability scores will be most important to your character. See the 6 ability scores on page 19 and the class summaries on 22 and 23 for more information. Okay, well, if I was to go back to page 19, you would see the stat bonuses that we were talking about, and if we were going to look at a ranger, it tells me that dexterity or strength is my prime constitution, and my secondary ability is either constitution or wisdom, and that really defines which type of ranger you are. You are either a fighter ranger, you get into the melee, or you are a sniper ranger who sits at the back and shoots things from a safe distance. Looking at the fact we've rolled a goblin, I am already thinking that their goblin is a ranger, a sniper, because he's not very physical, or at least he might be physical. It could be a tough goblin. It really depends on how we assign the ability scores. Next step would be select an ancestry, which we already discussed. Next step would be pick a background. Your character's background might represent their upbringing and aptitude they've been honing since youth, or another aspect of their life before they became an adventurer. Character backgrounds appear in chapter 2, starting on page 60. They typically provide 2 ability boosts, one that can be applied to either 2 specific ability scores and one that is free. Training in a specific skill, or training in a low skill and a specific skill feat. It tells you to record all your stuff in the character sheet. That's a no-brainer. Choose your class. At this point, you need to decide your character's class. A class gives your character access to a suite of heroic abilities, determines how effectively they fight, and governs how easily they can shake off or avoid certain harmful effects. Each class is fully detailed in chapter 3, but the summaries on page 22-23 provide an overview of which and tells you which ability scores are important when playing that class. You don't need to write down all of your character's class features yet. You simply need to know which class you want to play, which determines the ability scores will be most important for your character. Next step is to determine your ability scores. Now that you've made the main mechanical choices for your character, it's time to finalise their ability scores. Do these 3 things. First, make sure you've applied all the ability boosts and ability flaws you've noted in previous steps from your ancestry, background and class. Then apply 4 more ability boosts to your character's ability scores, choosing a different ability for each, increasing that ability by 2. Finally, record your starting ability scores and ability modifiers as determined and using table 1.1 and ability modifiers. Remember that each ability boost adds 2 to the base score of 10, and each ability flaw subtracts 2. You should have no ability score lower than 8 and higher than 18, which is a great system. Again, because, like I said, having an ability score of 20 should be something that you should aspire to, not something you start with. Record class details. Now that you have recorded all the benefits and class features your character receives from the class you've chosen, while you already noted your key ability score, you'll want to be sure to record the following class features. Your starting hit points, initial proficiencies, class advancements, and then your character sheets. Rate your character's total hit points, and then trained, expert, master, legendary. Buy your equipment, calculate your modifiers. Finishing details, and the finishing details is the second stage. That's your alignment, your age, deity, heat, armor class, all the supplementary information. The next step would be to go to our old friend Fantasy Name Generator and have a look at goblin names. And here we have, when you type in goblin into the search bar, you are rewarded with numerous goblin names from numerous sources. We have Dungeons and Dragons goblins, we have Goblin Town names, we have Harry Potter goblins, Warhammer goblins, Warcraft goblins, Pathfinder goblins, obviously the one we're going to choose, Magic the Gathering, etc, etc. And we went here and we found that it spat out 10 names at us. A lot of the time when it comes to Fantasy Name Generator, as much as I love the site, they do tend to just churn out like random consonants together, and they don't really make a legible, pronounceable word. But in this instance, we have found ourselves the mighty Ghaz, and 2 options or 2 spellings of Ghaz. Ghaz, as you might know, that fella who sang with Supergrass, or Ghaz with an H to make him more fantasy. So I'm going to go with Ghaz with an H to make him more fantasy. So our goblin is Ghaz. And thank you once again, Fantasy Name Generator. You are worth your weight in gold. Subscribe or donate to this guy's channel. Keep him paid and keep his website up and running for all us role players who are constantly needing to find names for characters on the spot. Alright, so the next thing we would do, building a Pathfinder character, is to go to the website pathbuilder2e.com. Can I just, at this point, say if you have a want or a need to play Pathfinder in any capacity, this character builder website is without a doubt one of the best resources I have found on the net for making characters. And subscribe to the guy's webpage, $5 I think it was, worth it, absolutely worth it. The amount of work and effort the people involved in making this website have done is beyond compare. Please guys, if you're going to use this website, send the guy $5, buy him a coffee, basically, is what it equates to. Going back to the options and choices that we made and when we were looking at the PDF, we're just going to quickly build our character on Pathfinder to show you how easy it is. So we have chosen our ancestry. We decided that they were going to be a scout and they are a ranger. As discussed before, all your stats start at 10. Now, as built, without touching the character, our stat line would read thus: 16 strength, 10 constitution, a minus an 8 wisdom, a 14 dexterity, a 10 intelligence, and a 12 charisma. But we don't want that. We discussed that our character is going to be a sniper, so we need to up the dexterity and dump the strength. And we also probably want to get our wisdom up. So we're going to use the optional flaw system. We take 2 negatives for a bonus. Now I'm going to take the negative in dexterity and strength, and I'm going to take a negative in charisma. He doesn't need to be charismatic and he doesn't need to be strong, and we're going to negate that negative on the wisdom. Now you see the website has already calculated this for us. We now have lost that negative. And now we go to our background boosts. We are going, yes, we want dexterity and we want our second one to be wisdom. We get that wisdom up. Our strengths went down, our wisdoms went up. And then our class boost is dexterity. They're now sitting on a 16 dexterity. Then we have our free boost for first level. These are 4 stat increases that you apply to your character. So the first one out the gate, hands down, no questions, is our dexterity. We want that to be our highest stat. We want it to be our most efficient stat. Now I'm going to stick another one in our wisdom. Give us a +2 wisdom. I'm going to stick a 1 in my constitution to give me at least 1 extra hit point. I'm going to stick 1 in my intelligence to give me an intelligence base boost. And that is as done for the stat bonuses. Our stat line now reads a strength of 10, a constitution of 12, a wisdom of 14, a dexterity of 18, and an intelligence of 12. So at this point we have chosen our ancestry, our background, and our class. We have applied our abilities. The next thing to do is our skills. We have 5 skills because we have an intelligence. We want to be dexterity based, so we're going to take all the dex skills of acrobatics, thievery, stealth, crafting's +1, terrain, 1 terrain. I take wisdom, medicine, because we can probably scavenge plants and fauna for making poultices to help heal things. I'll go with religion because we have quite a high stat bonus on that. That's our skills done. We have 1 extra skill that we can pick. I'm going to take occultism. Heritage, we haven't chosen a heritage. So these are our 5 choices that we talked about. The one that's susceptible is fire resistant, the one that can eat anything, the one that can bite your face off, the one that is adapted to the cold, and the one who is basically Wile E. Coyote. I'm going to go for that one for the extra hit points and being able to survive a fall. Ancestry feat, we're going with very sneaky. We want it to be a sneaky sniper, and our class feat is crossbow ace because we want to be able to shoot things and put their eye out with our crossbow. A hunter's edge, we are going to take the precision one, which is the extra dice of damage when you've marched or prey, and we get our hunt prey action, which is exclusive to being a ranger, and we have a free feat of forager, which means basically if I make a survival roll, I can feed myself and up to 4 other people. If I hit a critical success, I can feed 8 people with my foraging, and that would be an exceptionally useful skill for feeding a recon party. If you were the scout of that recon party, which I kind of get in the feeling Ghaz is. Ghaz is also quite a human sounding name, so maybe that was a name that was applied to him. Maybe he has a long stream of consonants that you can't really pronounce in human tongue, but shortened to Ghaz. The next thing is to look at our gear. Now, every character starts with 15 gold, and then I go to the add gear section, and in the gear section there is for every class a kit, and in the kit is all the basic gear that every class needs. So I will buy that out of my 15 gold, take that out of your account, thanks very much. I now have 11 gold and some change. And in the backpack we have all our basic equipment that we need for adventuring. Right, now because we want our guy to be a sniper, we need to equip him with a ranged weapon. So I went to the shops and I bought him a crossbow. Basic crossbow does 1d8 piercing, and it does 1d8 precision damage when I have marked and I have the hunter's edge equipped. Okay guys, so at this point we have assigned all the stuff, all the ingredients, all the necessary ingredients we need to play a character. We have our race, we have our background, we have our class. We have assigned the stats, we have assigned the skills, we have assigned the heritage stuff and the ancestry feat and the class feat, and we have all their other gear equipped here. We have given them some weapons, we have equipped them some armor, we have equipped him some basic adventuring gear. And at this point you can sit down at a Pathfinder game and start rolling dice and killing monsters and having a blast and doing that. But we don't do that at level 10 NPC. At level 10 NPC we want to have a life, we want to have something to do with our characters, and this is the point where we go into the life path generator. So I'll see you in a few. Alrighty. Now, you do have life path if you're playing 5th edition, and you have access to the supplementary books such as Xanathar's Guide to Everything. You should have the life path generator in those books, and you could roll on those tables and make yourself a character backstory there. But there is other options out there. I just want to highlight one of them. Alrighty, so alrighty, so in the last video we used Xanathar's Guide to Everything and the supplementary tables in there to generate our life path. You could easily use those tables again if you have that book and you wanted to make a character for Pathfinder 2nd edition, But there are other options, and I'd like to show you one of them now. If you just went to the search bar and typed in Pathfinder Life Path Generator into the search bar, it will spit out a few options. And the first one there from pbegames.com. Click on that. It takes us to their page, and as easy as clicking a button, it will generate a life path. And then this life path that is generated for us tells us that we were born in an alien place. Perhaps your parents were visited in an unfamiliar locale. You were raised by an orphanage, a monastery, charity, or similar group. Now, if we was writing a backstory about this character, this sounds like somebody who's abandoned the monastery. A perfect monk starting place, but we've already made a monk. So you have some things about siblings, which kind of contradicts that thing there about having family and you were abandoned in an orphanage or a monastery. But there are some interesting things here. You dig a little bit deeper. Your young brother that suffered grave misfortune, a crippling addiction to drugs, alcohol, gaming, or something else. And there is appearance. You favour furs and hides. You wear your hair long or braided in a ponytail. You carry a piece of clothing as a token of your mother. That's quite sweet, quite a tender reminder of her lost past. And then this life path generator generated us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 important events have happened in this character's life. I won't go into too many details. I just wanted to highlight a life path generator can be generated for you by pressing a button. I have done this for the purposes of our video already, and I have the life path, the bullet points written down, and the life path written, so we'll have a look at that next. Okay, so this is the random life path that the website gave us. We have quite a lot of family drama here, a lot of history going on between Ghaz and her sisters, and there's some life events here that we're going to have a look at, and I've incorporated into a little backstory that I've written. So, without further ado, here is the story of Ghaz the Ranger. The Goblin Scout, known as Ghaz, was the very definition of being born in the wrong place at the wrong time. Her parents were junkers and scavengers, an honourable goblin trade to be proud of, and they were one of many families that were camp followers of the Goblin Horde during the Goblin Blood Wars. With Ghaz's mother heavily pregnant, with Ghaz and her twin Gox, the family couldn't escape when the human forces overran the camp. But thankfully, instead of putting the camp to the sword, they were taken captive and brought back to Beryssia in chains. Ghaz's family were one of the lucky ones, as they were put to work as servants and labourers for the knight that claimed them as his property after the campaign was over. A lot of goblins were granted their freedom after the war, and loosened of their chains, Ghaz's parents returned to their trade of junking and crafting, a trade at which they became very successful. Ghaz's family had enough wealth and status to become a clan of their own, an urban one, in the great city of Beryssia. Having this freedom and disposable income, Ghaz and Gox grew up to be bratish goblins, spending the family's money on the latest fashions and trends, while the elder siblings knuckled down and helped the parents strengthen the clan's political position. At one point, Ghaz and Gox were to be married off to another merchant guild's family. The union would cement Ghaz's family's claims to being a full-blown clan. Ghaz and Gox, however, ruined this union by public acts of promiscuity with other goblins, knowing full well that news of their indiscretions would get back to the ears of their families. The wedding and the union was called off, and the family never achieved clan status, a sore point at which Ghaz's eldest sister Gear to this day is still seething about. Eventually the parents died, and Gear was left in charge of the family. She immediately rounded on Ghaz and Gox, cutting off their money and forcing them to get jobs or an education. Ghaz tried school, but she lacked the focus. She did learn a lot about sneaking out of locked dorms after curfew though, skills that she would later come to earn a living by. She met a travelling goblin acrobat and dog tamer one summer and fell madly in love. And just to finally close the chapter on her family drama, she decided to be the cliché that her sister always said she was, and ran off to join Kurt's street circus. She became his assistant and a lot of his acts, and she became a very accomplished acrobat in her own right. She might have pursued that life further, even considered marriage to Kurd, but Kurd was mixed up in some pretty shady goings on at the circus. Ghaz saw a lot of comings and goings after the stage lights dimmed for the evening and the dogs were asleep. Eventually, she began to apply some of that business school acumen she had been taught back at boarding school to the accounts of the circus, and it soon became clear that Kurd's circus was making more money than it was earning. Ghaz discovered that Kurd was keeping a pixie prisoner in a magical cage. He would force the pixie to produce this intoxicating pixie dust and then manipulate Marks into divulging secrets and parting with their money. Armed with this information, Kurd would sell it to the local thieves guild in exchange for protection and a share of the profits. It was a dirty business, and Ghaz was torn between her feelings for Kurd and knowing that being mixed up in the thieves guild's business was only going to end badly for her. She did what she always did. She ran away, again, but not before freeing the pixie. She and Jester Dew got into a few adventures together, nothing too exciting, just day-to-day living as they hit the road. Eventually, after a few years, in which time Ghaz earned herself a good reputation as a reliable and skilled ranger, Jester Dew found a way back to his Fae people and they parted as good friends. Ghaz now earns her keep guiding adventuring parties through difficult terrain, 1,000,000 miles from the spoiled brat she was in her youth, but 1,000,000 miles further from ever returning to that life. Okay, so that was the backstory for Ghaz the Ranger, and now we have the unpacking of the backstory and the plot hooks and the things that lead on to the dramas and the adventures that the character probably going to have over the course of their campaign. So in the clumsily titled section, things we made up / learned about Ghaz. First thing, the Goblin clan / family drama, Ghaz's family. With the death of the parents and Gear being in charge of the family, there's a river of resentment that runs deep there. There's no drama quite like a family drama, so there is role-playing potential there. The next point is Kurd's travelling street circus. Kurd being her lover, or her former lover, and the feelings that she still has for Kurd, conflicting with the danger that he brings, the Thieves Guild and the illegal use of the pixie dust and using that in a way to coerce information out of Marks. It's a dirty business, and instead of turning Kurd over to authorities or confronting him about it, she just ran away from the problem. That's the kind of thing I think is going to come back and haunt her in the future. And certainly with the release of Jester Dew, the pixie, from that magical cage, there's going to have to be repercussions for that. The Thieves Guild aren't going to be happy. Is Kurd going to get hurt? Ghaz have to come back and rescue her former lover and put herself in the firing line and maybe face up to the responsibilities of her actions. That leads on to Jester Dew and his pixie dust. That opens up a whole world of possibilities of abuse, basically, of the pixies for the dust they produce. Is Kurd the only one who ever thought of doing it? Is it a worldwide epidemic? Does it happen a lot? Are the pixies okay with this? I doubt they are. You know, there's quite a lot there you could look at. You could look at maybe a reprisal from the pixies, the Fae themselves stepping forward and saying we're not going to take this abuse anymore, and fighting back. The liberation of pixies that have been caught in magical cages all over the world. There's a good adventure in that, I think. Over the course of her career, she's earned herself a good reputation. Now, that means that she's good at her job, which would suggest that Ghaz is particularly adept at being a ranger. Is she just naturally talented? Or does she work really, really hard for that reputation? Did she in fact earn that reputation, or was it something that she and Jester Dew created or fabricated together to help them make money? There is maybe some little wiggle room for being hired by somebody because of her reputation and discovering that she's actually quite rubbish at the job. Or maybe she isn't. The fifth point is leading back into the family drama of the first step in Gox, her twin that she's still close to and she still loves. Is she still a brat? Is she going to bring some drama to Ghaz's life? Is she going to show up pretending to be a ranger herself, or posing, maybe even posing as Ghaz as a ranger, and then ruining her good reputation? Now that's a good flip. You could have that as a scenario. That is actually quite interesting. And the last point is always a little character reference point, some inspiration. Looking back over Ghaz's character and how she likes to dress in the finest fashions, and she looks like a fish out of water, and she's in quite a rugged environment. She lives off the land, she hunts and traps animals, and she hacks her way through forests, and she likes to wear the nicest clothes. Suggests to me that she is well, she looks like a fish out of water, even for a goblin, because you've got to imagine I'm approaching this from a human point of view, and I'm injecting all manner of Dallas or Dynasty style spoiled brat soap opera to this character. When I look at her, or I think about the character of Ghaz and how she looks, I would imagine her to look somewhat like Bryce Dallas Howard's character in Jurassic World, or maybe even, if you to go back a little bit further, for maybe some of the older role players, Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Both of these characters were strong, independent women who were put in a harsh environment, and they survived through their own wit and guile and skills. Bryce Dallas Howard or Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, they would be like a starting point. I would think about being quite well spoken for a goblin, even wearing the nicest clothes, looking like very much like somebody who shouldn't be good at their job, but actually really is really good at their job. Is a good starting point for this character. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this section. The end of the clumsily titled Things We Made Up and Learned About Ghaz section. There's enough meat in these bones for a dungeon master and a player to come together and make some interesting story points for her character Ghaz. I'll see you in a few. Okay guys, so there we have it. We have both parts now of Ghaz the Ranger. We have the numbers and stats and the mechanics that you need to play the game, and we have a little backstory to apply to the character to give them some motivation, some wants and needs, some things to do, have an impact in the world. On a personal note about making Ghaz, I found this character a little bit tricky to come up with a backstory. I've only played Pathfinder 2nd Edition in Homebrew, and I certainly haven't ever played in the official Golarian world that the Pathfinder is set in. I haven't played any official adventure paths. I think I played maybe the first part of the second one. I think it was set in Varisia, which was why I used Varisia as the city, the human city in the backstory of Ghaz. So there's probably some huge lore gaps there, and probably the way the goblins interact with humans is radically different to how I imagined them in my backstory. But at the end of the day, it's just a backstory for a player and a dungeon master to look over and work together on. It's not canon, it's not going to be entered into the lore of Golarion, so it really just, if you got this character and you're wanting to play them in a Pathfinder 2nd Edition game, it would really be up to you and the DM to fill in the gaps and make the character background work for the world setting that you're playing in. Well, I don't think there's anything else I can add to this. That is Ghaz the Ranger ready for play. The only thing that remains for me to say is thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, it's over here, isn't it? No, it's here? Yeah, here. Hit the like button, hit the bell if you want to be notified when the next one's out, and hit the subscribe button if you want me to continue to make these videos for you guys. Oh, before I forget, I am setting up a Google Drive, a G Drive, for all the characters that I make on the channel. It will be available at this link down here. Rare code lock from last week's episode and Ghaz will be available after I finish it up doing this. I'll attach them as PDFs with all the numbers and stats filled in for first level, and the backstories will be a PDF, so it should be legible in any web browser. The only thing I don't provide is the artwork for the characters. That's up to you guys to decide how your characters look. I have a smidgen of artistic talent, but nowhere near the levels required for what I would consider to be character art. If any of you guys are artistic enough or feel that you want to lend your talents to that, then feel free to drop me an email with your concept of how Rare Coldluck or Ghaz the Ranger would appear or look to you. So finally, as always guys, may all your adventures be filled with fun, frolics and fortunes.